she joked at lunch. The boss would never notice me. He walked in, smirked, and closed the door. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. Some words are whispered, others are meant to be forgotten, but the ones that change your life, those are always heard by the wrong person at exactly the right moment. The fluorescent lights of Crawford & Associates hummed their usual morning tune as Ariel Stolte balanced her coffee cup and a stack of quarterly reports against her hip. 25 years old, with warm brown skin that glowed even under the harsh office lighting, she moved through the marble lobby with the quiet grace of someone who had learned to take up just enough space to do her job well, and not an inch more. Her hair was pulled back in a neat, low bun, a few natural curls escaping to frame her face. She wore a simple navy blazer over a cream blouse, the kind of outfit that said, "professional," without saying, "notice me." In a building full of sharp suits and sharper ambitions, Ariel had mastered the art of being essential without being visible. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, revealing the familiar faces of the 15th floor, her floor. Investment analysts, junior associates, and fellow administrative staff filled the small space, their morning conversations a blend of weekend stories and market predictions. "Did you see the Hendricks portfolio numbers?" whispered Janet from compliance, her voice barely audible over the elevator's mechanical hum. "Brutal," replied Tom, a junior analyst who always smelled faintly of expensive cologne and desperation. But that's what happens when you bet against Perry's instincts. At the mention of their CEO's name, the elevator fell into that particular kind of silence that expensive suits and corner offices command. Jeff Perry was more than a boss. He was an institution. At 36, he had transformed Crawford & Associates from a mid-tier investment firm into one of Manhattan's most respected financial powerhouses. Ariel had seen him exactly 4 times in her 10 months at the company. Twice in the elevator, once during the quarterly meeting, and once when he'd walked past her desk without so much as a glance. Each time she'd felt that strange combination of insignificance and electricity that comes from being in the presence of someone who seemed to exist in a completely different universe. The elevator stopped at the 15th floor, and Ariel stepped out into the familiar chaos of ringing phones and clicking keyboards. Her desk sat in the far corner, positioned perfectly to observe the daily drama of corporate life, while remaining largely unobserved herself. "Ariel," called out Monica, her closest work friend, waving from the break room doorway. "Come on, we're doing lunch plans." The break room buzzed with the usual midday energy. 5 women from various departments had claimed the round table by the window, their salads and sandwiches creating a small island of normalcy in their high-pressure world. "So," said Lisa from HR, leaning forward conspiratorially, "did anyone else notice that Perry's been working even later than usual? I swear his office light was still on when I left at 9 last night." "The man's a machine," laughed Carmen from accounting. "I don't think he has a personal life, just work, work, work." "Maybe he needs someone to teach him how to have fun," suggested Monica, with a mischievous grin. "Someone to show him there's life outside these walls." The conversation flowed around Ariel like water around a stone. She listened, occasionally smiling at the right moments, but her mind wandered to the stack of reports waiting on her desk. She had learned early in life that it was safer to observe than to participate, safer to blend in than to stand out. "What about you, Ariel?" Lisa's voice pulled her back to the present. "Don't you think our ice-cold CEO could use some warming up?" All eyes turned to her, and Ariel felt that familiar flush creep up her neck. I wouldn't know. He's the boss." "Oh, come on," Monica pressed, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "If Jeff Perry looked at you the way he looks at those profit margins, you'd be married by Christmas." The table erupted in laughter, and Ariel's cheeks burned. "Please," she said, her voice soft but carrying that hint of sadness that comes from believing something with absolute certainty. "The boss would never notice someone like me." The words hung in the air for just a moment before the conversation moved on to weekend plans and office gossip. But 30 feet away, standing perfectly still outside the break room door, Jeff Perry had heard every word. He had been walking to the conference room, his mind occupied with the afternoon's board presentation, when that particular combination of words had stopped him cold. Not the laughter, not the casual office chatter, but that voice, soft, genuine, tinged with a resignation that struck something deep in his chest. "Someone like me." For the first time in months, Jeff Perry found himself truly paying attention to something that had nothing to do with profit margins or market projections. Through the break room's glass wall he could see her, the woman who believed she was invisible, Arielle Stolter. He knew her name from employee files, had signed her performance reviews, had probably walked past her desk 100 times. But standing there watching her tuck a stray curl behind her ear while she listened to her colleagues with patient attention, he realized he had never actually seen her, until now. As the group dispersed and returned to their desks, Jeff remained in the hallway, his presentation momentarily forgotten. An unfamiliar feeling stirred in his chest, curiosity mixed with something he couldn't quite name. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to his assistant. "Please have Arielle Stolter bring the Morrison account files to my office at 3 p.m. For the first time in his professional life, Jeff Perry was about to make a decision that had absolutely nothing to do with business, and everything to do with proving someone very, very wrong. Some conversations end when people walk away. Others end when someone realizes they've been listening to exactly what they needed to hear. There are moments when the world shifts on its axis, and you don't realize it until you're already falling." At 2:47 p.m., Arielle's hands trembled slightly as she organized the Morrison account files for the third time. The manila folders sat perfectly aligned on her desk, but her mind was anything but organized. In 13 minutes, she would walk into Jeff Perry's office, the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Manhattan skyline like a modern-day throne room. She had been there only twice before, once to deliver urgent documents when his assistant was sick, and once during her initial interview 10 months ago. Both times, she had felt like an intruder in a space designed for people far more important than herself. "You look nervous," Monica observed, perching on the edge of Arielle's desk. "It's just a file delivery. You'll be in and out in 2 minutes." "I know," Arielle replied, smoothing down her blazer. "It's just, he's never specifically requested me before. Usually Sarah handles all his direct requests." What she didn't say was that something about the timing felt significant. The message had come less than an hour after lunch, less than an hour after her thoughtless comment about being invisible. Coincidence, surely. Jeff Perry didn't have time to think about throwaway comments from administrative staff. At 2:59, Arielle stood outside the heavy oak door that separated the executive wing from the rest of the floor. The nameplate read, "Jefferson Perry, Chief Executive Officer," in elegant gold lettering. She knocked twice, soft but confident. "Come in." His voice carried through the door, with that same commanding presence she remembered. Deep, measured, the kind of voice that made boardrooms fall silent. Arielle turned the handle and stepped into a world that seemed to exist in a different stratosphere. The office was larger than her studio apartment, with mahogany bookshelves lining one wall and abstract art adorning the others. Jeff stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the massive windows that framed the city like a living painting. He wore a charcoal grey suit that fit him like it had been designed specifically for his broad shoulders and lean frame. "Mr. Perry," Arielle's voice came out softer than intended. "I have the Morrison files you requested." He turned slowly, and for the first time in 10 months, Arielle found herself the sole focus of Jeff Perry's attention. His eyes were a surprising shade of blue-gray, the color of storm clouds, and they seemed to take in every detail of her appearance with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Thank you, Arielle." The way he said her name, carefully, deliberately, sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Please, set them on the conference table." She moved across the plush carpet, acutely aware of every step, every breath, every subtle sound in the room. The files whispered against the polished wood as she set them down, and she turned to leave, her duty complete. "Actually," Jeff's voice stopped her mid-step. "Could you close the door, please?" Arielle's heart skipped. "Close it? Please." She turned back to the door, her hand hovering over the handle. This was unusual. Meetings with executives always happened with doors open, a company policy designed to maintain transparency and prevent misconduct allegations. But Jeff Perry wasn't just any executive. He was the man who wrote the policies. The click of the door closing seemed to echo through the vast space. Is everything all right, Mr. Perry?" she asked, remaining near the door. "Is there an issue with my work?" Jeff moved away from the windows, and Arielle noticed something different about his usual commanding presence. There was a softness around his edges, a hesitation that made him seem almost human. "No," he said, settling against the edge of his desk with casual elegance. "Your work is exemplary. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss." Arielle's confusion must have shown on her face, because Jeff's expression softened further. "I've been reviewing performance metrics," he continued, though something in his tone suggested this conversation had nothing to do with spreadsheets, "and I realized I don't know nearly enough about the people who make this company run smoothly." "Oh," the word escaped before she could stop it. That's very thoughtful of you. Tell me, Ariel," Jeff said, his voice dropping to a more conversational tone. "How long have you been with us?" 8 months, sir. And before Crawford and Associates. I worked at a small accounting firm in Brooklyn, nothing as prestigious as this." She gestured vaguely at the opulent surroundings. Jeff studied her face as she spoke, noting the way she unconsciously minimized herself, the way she seemed surprised that he would want to know anything about her background. "Do you enjoy working here?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. "Yes, very much. It's an incredible opportunity, and I'm grateful." "That's not what I asked." Jeff's interruption was gentle but firm. "Do you enjoy it? Not are you grateful for it? Not is it a good opportunity? Do you wake up excited about coming to work?" Ariel blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever asked her that question before. Jobs were about security, about paying rent and buying groceries, and maybe saving enough for a vacation someday. Enjoyment was a luxury she had never thought to consider. I like feeling useful," she said finally, her honesty surprising them both. "I like knowing that the work I do matters, even if it's small." "Small?" Jeff's eyebrows raised slightly. "The Morrison account you just delivered represents $12 million in investments. Your organizational skills and attention to detail are the only reason that deal closed on schedule. How is that small?" Ariel felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I just meant, compared to what you do, what the analysts do." "Ariel," the way he said her name made her look up, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "Do you remember what you said at lunch today?" Her stomach dropped. The blood drained from her face so quickly she felt momentarily dizzy. What?" "About being noticed," Jeff continued, his voice gentle but unwavering. "You said I would never notice someone like you." The world seemed to tilt. He had heard. Somehow, impossibly, he had heard her thoughtless comment, her moment of self-deprecating vulnerability. Ariel wanted to disappear, to sink through the expensive carpet and never resurface. "Mr. Perry, I'm so sorry. That was completely inappropriate. I was just joking with my colleagues, and I never meant—" "Stop." The single word cut through her panicked apology. Jeff pushed himself off the desk and took a step closer, though he maintained a respectful distance. "You have nothing to apologize for. But you were wrong." The simple statement hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. "Wrong?" Ariel whispered. Jeff's expression was unreadable, professional mask firmly in place, but something flickered in his storm-gray eyes. "The assumption that you're invisible, that someone like me wouldn't notice someone like you." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "It's not that I hadn't noticed you, Ariel. It's that I hadn't allowed myself to." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither was quite ready to name. "I don't understand," Ariel said softly. Jeff moved to the window, his back to her once again. "Neither do I," he admitted. "All I know is that 8 months ago when I reviewed your resume, I saw qualifications and references. Today I heard your voice and realized I've been blind to the person behind the paperwork." Ariel stood frozen, unsure whether to stay or flee, unsure whether this conversation was happening in reality or in some elaborate daydream. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jeff turned back to face her, and for a moment the powerful CEO disappeared entirely, replaced by a man who looked uncertain and surprisingly vulnerable. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I'd like to find out." The silence stretched between them, filled with possibility and terror in equal measure. "Ariel." "Yes? Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" And in that moment, she realized that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. Sometimes the most dangerous question isn't the one that's asked. It's the one that makes you realize you've been waiting your whole life to hear it. The space between a question and its answer can hold an entire lifetime. Sometimes it takes only seconds to decide who you want to become. Ariel's apartment in Queens had never felt smaller than it did that evening. The studio space, with its modest kitchenette and single window overlooking the fire escape, seemed to close in around her as she replayed the afternoon's events for the 100th time. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" The question echoed in her mind as she sat cross-legged on her worn sofa, a cup of chamomile tea growing cold in her hands, On the coffee table before her lay the business card Jeff had given her. Simple, elegant, with his personal number written in careful handwriting across the back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Monica. Girl, you've been radio silent since this afternoon. Everything okay after your mystery meeting with Perry? Ariel stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could she explain that her entire world had shifted in the span of 20 minutes? That the man she'd convinced herself was completely out of her orbit had not only noticed her but had asked her to dinner. She typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "Everything's fine. Long day. Talk tomorrow." The lie felt necessary. She wasn't ready to share this with anyone, wasn't even sure it was real herself. Rising from the couch, Ariel moved to her small bathroom and studied her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked the same as always. Warm brown skin, natural hair that she'd finally learned to love after years of fighting it, eyes that held kindness but had learned to expect little in return. "It's not that I hadn't noticed you, Ariel. It's that I hadn't allowed myself to." She touched her reflection, wondering what Jeff had seen that she couldn't. Her whole life she had been the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who blended into backgrounds and made other people comfortable. Even in college, even in her previous job, she had mastered the art of being essential without being remarkable. Her phone rang, jolting her from her thoughts. The number on the screen made her heart stop. It was him. Ariel stared at the ringing phone for 3 full rings before answering, her voice barely steady. "Hello? Ariel." Jeff's voice was softer than it had been in the office, warmer. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "No, it's fine." She sank onto her bed, gripping the phone like a lifeline. "Is everything all right?" "I wanted to apologize," he said, and she could hear him moving around, perhaps pacing. "I realized after you left that I put you in an impossible position today. The power dynamic, the professional complications. I should have thought before speaking." Ariel's heart sank. He was calling to take it back, to return them to their safe, distant roles. She had been foolish to think. "I'm calling to give you an out," Jeff continued. "If you want to pretend this conversation never happened, if you want to maintain our professional relationship exactly as it was, I'll understand completely. No awkwardness, no consequences for your position here." The relief in his voice was unmistakable, as if he expected her to take the escape route he was offering. And why wouldn't he? She was Ariel Stolter, the invisible assistant who never made waves. "But," he added, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "I hope you don't." The words hung between them across the city, connecting Manhattan to Queens through a phone line that suddenly felt like the most important bridge in the world. "Can I ask you something?" Ariel found herself saying. "Anything. When you heard what I said at lunch, what did you think?" Jeff was quiet for so long that Ariel wondered if the call had dropped. When he spoke again, his voice held a vulnerability she had never heard from him. "I thought about my father," he said finally. "He built his first company from nothing, worked 18-hour days, sacrificed everything for success. He used to tell me that the only way to stay focused was to keep everyone at arm's length. Personal connections are distractions," he'd say. "The moment you start caring about individuals, you lose sight of the bigger picture." Ariel listened, sensing that this confession was costing him something. "I've lived by that philosophy for 15 years, Jeff continued. "I've kept my distance, maintained professional boundaries, treated everyone as pieces on a chessboard rather than as people, and it worked. The company thrived, profits soared, everyone respected the cold, calculating CEO who never let emotions cloud his judgment. But," Ariel prompted softly, "but when I heard you say that I would never notice someone like you, I realized that I had become exactly what my father was. Successful and completely alone. I had employees, not relationships. Subordinates, not connections. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that was enough." Ariel closed her eyes, picturing him in his pristine office, surrounded by luxury but isolated by his own success. "Your voice," Jeff said, "the sadness in it, when you said those words, it was like hearing myself described from the outside. And I realized that the person you were describing, the boss who wouldn't notice you, wasn't who I wanted to be." "Mr. Perry," "Jeff," he corrected gently. "When I'm talking about my fears and failures, I think we can drop the formalities." A small smile tugged at Ariel's lips. "Jeff," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "Can I tell you something? Please." "I've spent my whole life trying to be invisible," she admitted. "It started in school. Being the smart, quiet girl was safer than being the one who stood out. In my family, I was the responsible one who never caused problems. At work, I perfected the art of being indispensable without being intrusive. She paused, gathering courage for the next part. But today, when you said my name, really said it like you were seeing me for the first time, I realized I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of settling for safe. The silence that followed was different from before. It felt full rather than empty, pregnant with possibility rather than doubt. "So," Jeff said finally, "does that mean—" "Yes," Ariel whispered before he could finish the question. "I would like to have dinner with you." She could hear him exhale as if he had been holding his breath. "There's a small Italian place in the village," he said. "Nonna's kitchen. It's quiet, intimate, not the kind of place where we'd run into colleagues." "You've thought about this," Ariel observed, amused. "I've thought about very little else since 3 o'clock this afternoon," Jeff admitted. 7:30 tomorrow? I can send a car. I can take the subway," Ariel interrupted. "I'm not helpless." Jeff chuckled, and the sound sent warmth spreading through her chest. "I'm learning that about you." After they hung up, Ariel sat in her small apartment and felt the walls expand around her. For the first time in years, the future felt like an open door rather than a predetermined path. She walked to her closet and began considering what a woman wears when she decides to stop being invisible. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Jeff Perry stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the city lights twinkle below. For the first time in 15 years, he wasn't thinking about quarterly projections or market volatility. He was thinking about the sound of his name in a soft voice that had somehow become the most important sound in his world. Tomorrow night would change everything. The question was no longer whether they were ready for that change. The question was whether they were brave enough to let it happen. The most dangerous decision isn't the one that might hurt you. It's the one that might save you from a life you never realized you were just surviving. Some nights are meant to be forgotten. Others are meant to be the beginning of everything that matters. Ariel stood before her bathroom mirror at 6:15 p.m., her hands trembling slightly as she applied a final coat of lip gloss. She had changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a deep burgundy dress she had bought for her cousin's wedding, but never worn, simple, elegant, with a subtle V-neck that was professional enough to feel safe, but feminine enough to feel noticed. Her natural hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, styled in a way that felt authentically her but more polished than her usual work look. Small gold hoops caught the light, and she had opted for minimal makeup that enhanced rather than masked her features. The woman in the mirror looked like Ariel, but a version of herself she had never quite had the courage to be, confident, beautiful, worthy of being seen. Her phone buzzed, looking forward to tonight. Jay. The simple message sent butterflies dancing through her stomach. She typed back, "Me too," then deleted it, then typed, "See you soon," deleted again, finally settled on my way. The subway ride from Queens to the village had never felt longer. Ariel found herself studying her reflection in the train window, rehearsing conversations in her head, alternating between excitement and pure terror. What did she even talk about with Jeff Perry outside of quarterly reports and file requests? Nonna's kitchen sat tucked between a vintage bookstore and a small florist on a quiet street in Greenwich Village. The warm glow from its windows spilled onto the sidewalk, and Ariel could smell garlic and fresh herbs from half a block away. It was intimate, cozy, the kind of place that felt like a secret shared between lovers. She paused outside, gathering courage, when the door opened and Jeff emerged. For a moment, Ariel forgot how to breathe. Gone was the imposing CEO in his power suit. Jeff wore dark jeans that fit him perfectly, a soft grey cashmere sweater that brought out his eyes, and a charcoal blazer that managed to be both casual and elegant. His hair was slightly less perfectly styled than usual, and when he smiled at her, the transformation was so complete she wondered if this was actually the same man who commanded boardrooms with a single glance. "Ariel," he said, and her name sounded different in his voice, warmer, more personal. "You look—" He trailed off, his eyes taking in every detail of her appearance with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "Beautiful," he finished softly. "You look absolutely beautiful." Heat rose in her cheeks. "Thank you. You look different." "Good. Different." Jeff chuckled, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that was surprisingly boyish. "I wasn't sure what to wear to dinner with someone who's seen me exclusively in suits for 10 months. "The sweater suits you," Ariel said, then immediately felt silly for the comment. "Shall we?" Jeff gestured toward the restaurant, placing his hand gently on the small of her back as he guided her inside. The touch was brief, respectful, but it sent electricity shooting up Ariel's spine. Nonna's kitchen was everything its name promised. Tiny, warm, with mismatched furniture, and the kind of authentic Italian atmosphere that couldn't be manufactured. Candles flickered on red checkered tablecloths, and the walls were covered with family photos and vintage wine bottles. "Mr. Perry," the elderly hostess greeted them with a knowing smile. "Your usual table?" Jeff nodded, and they were led to a corner booth that offered both privacy and a view of the bustling open kitchen. As they settled across from each other, Ariel noticed that several other diners glanced their way, not with recognition, but with the subtle appreciation reserved for attractive couples. The thought that they might appear to be a couple sent a thrill through her that she tried to suppress. "So," Jeff said once they had ordered wine, a Chianti that he clearly knew well, "I have a confession." Ariel's heart skipped. "What's that?" "I've been coming here for 3 years and I've never brought anyone else." He met her eyes across the small table. "I wasn't sure it was appropriate." "Because of work?" "Because it felt too personal," Jeff admitted. "This place reminds me why I love this city, why I chose to build my life here instead of following the expected path to Connecticut suburbia and country club memberships." The wine arrived, and as Jeff tasted and approved it with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to fine things, Ariel found herself studying his face. Away from the harsh office lighting, she could see laugh lines around his eyes, a small scar near his temple, the way his mouth curved slightly when he concentrated. "Tell me about the expected path," Ariel said as their glasses were filled. Jeff was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine. "Prep school, Ivy League, MBA, marry someone from the right family, produce heirs to carry on the business legacy, move to Greenwich, join the yacht club, spend weekends playing golf with other men who measure success in zeros." That sounds... Ariel searched for a diplomatic word. "Soul-crushing," Jeff supplied with a wry smile. "It is. I watched my father live that life for 60 years. He had everything money could buy, and nothing that actually mattered." "What actually matters?" The question slipped out before Ariel could stop it. Jeff looked at her for a long moment, his grey eyes serious. "I'm still figuring that out, but I'm starting to think it has something to do with genuine connection, with seeing and being seen by someone who knows who you really are." The weight of his gaze made Ariel feel exposed and cherished simultaneously. "Who are you really, Jeff Perry?" He laughed, but it held no humor. "You might be the first person to ask me that question. I find that hard to believe." "Think about it," Jeff said, leaning forward slightly. "In business, people want to know what I can do for them. In social situations, they want to know what I'm worth or who I know. Even in relationships," he paused, "especially in relationships, women have been more interested in the lifestyle I could provide than in the person providing it." There was pain in his voice, carefully controlled but unmistakable. "That must be lonely," Ariel said softly. "I told myself it was practical, efficient, that emotional complications were weaknesses I couldn't afford." Jeff took a sip of wine. "Until I heard you laugh yesterday afternoon." "What?" "In the break room, when Monica made that joke about me looking at profit margins. You laughed, and it was genuine. No agenda, no calculation. Just honest amusement at a friend's silly comment." He shook his head. "I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone had laughed like that in my presence." Their appetizers arrived, bruschetta with tomatoes so fresh they seemed to burst with sunshine, and Jeff insisted she try the burrata that the owner made fresh daily. As they shared food and stories, Ariel felt the careful walls she had built around herself beginning to crumble. "Your turn," Jeff said after telling her about his disastrous attempt to learn Italian cooking during a business trip to Rome. "Tell me something real about Ariel Stolter. What do you want to know?" "Everything," he said simply. "Start with why you moved to New York." Ariel found herself talking about things she rarely shared. Her childhood in a small town in Georgia, her mother's dreams of her becoming a teacher, her father's death when she was 19, and how it had changed everything. She talked about feeling lost in college, about taking the first job that offered stability, about moving to New York with a suitcase and enough savings for 2 months' rent. "I wanted to prove I could make it somewhere that didn't know my story," she said. "Somewhere I could be anyone I chose to be." "And who did you choose to be?" "Safe," Ariel admitted. "I chose to be safe." Jeff reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The touch was warm, gentle, completely natural and yet completely revolutionary. "What if you chose to be brave instead?" he asked softly. Ariel looked down at their joined hands, his pale against her darker skin, strong fingers intertwined with delicate ones. The contrast was striking and somehow perfect. "I'm here, aren't I?" she said, meeting his gaze. "Yes," Jeff said, his thumb tracing small circles on her hand. "You are." The main courses arrived, ossobuco for him, linguine alle vongole for her, but neither seemed particularly interested in eating. The conversation flowed like the wine, covering childhood dreams, favorite books, travel wishes, the little details that transform strangers into something approaching intimacy. "Can I ask you something that might be inappropriate?" Ariel said, as they shared a tiramisu that was probably illegal in at least 3 states. "I think we're past worrying about inappropriate," Jeff replied with a smile that made her stomach flutter. "Have you ever, in all your time running the company, have you ever been involved with someone you work with?" Jeff's expression grew serious. "Never, not once. It was one of my absolute rules." "What changed?" He set down his spoon and looked at her with an intensity that made the rest of the restaurant fade away. "You," he said simply. "You changed everything." As they walked slowly back toward the subway station, neither wanting the evening to end, Jeff caught her hand in his again. They moved through the village streets like they had all the time in the world, talking softly about everything and nothing. "Ariel," Jeff said as they reached the station entrance. "Yes? I want to see you again. Not in the office, not for work, just us." She smiled, feeling braver than she had ever felt in her life. "I'd like that. Tomorrow night. Aren't you afraid people will talk?" Jeff stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Let them talk. I'm tired of living my life for other people's opinions." He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, a gesture so tender and unexpected that it brought tears to her eyes. "Sweet dreams, Ariel Stolte," he whispered against her skin. As the subway carried her back to Queens, Ariel touched the spot where his lips had been and knew that nothing would ever be the same again. And for the first time in her life, that thought didn't terrify her. It thrilled her. Some evenings end when you go home. Others end when you realize you found exactly where you belong. The most beautiful secrets are the ones that feel too precious to keep, but too dangerous to share. 3 weeks had passed since that first dinner at Nonna's kitchen, and Ariel found herself living a double life she had never imagined possible. By day, she remained the efficient, invisible assistant, arriving precisely at 8:30 a.m., organizing files with meticulous care, attending meetings where she took notes and spoke only when directly addressed. To her colleagues, nothing had changed. She was still the same reliable Ariel who brought homemade cookies on Fridays and remembered everyone's coffee preferences. But by night, she had become someone entirely different. She was the woman who received texts that made her smile during budget meetings, the woman who had dinner reservations at intimate restaurants she'd never dreamed of affording, the woman who fell asleep with the scent of expensive cologne on her pillow from stolen moments in Jeff's office after hours. It was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. On this particular Thursday morning, Ariel sat at her desk trying to focus on expense reports while her phone buzzed discreetly in her drawer. She waited until Monica stepped away for coffee before checking the message. "Thinking about you in that blue dress from last night. Can't concentrate on the Henderson presentation. This is highly unprofessional of me." Jay heat bloomed in her cheeks as she remembered the previous evening. Dinner at a small French bistro in Soho, followed by a walk through Washington Square Park, where Jeff had kissed her for the first time. Really kissed her. Soft and urgent, against the trunk of an old oak tree, his hands tangled in her hair while the city sparkled around them. She typed back, "Focus on Henderson. We can't afford for the CEO to be distracted by his assistant." His response came immediately. Too late. Already completely distracted, Ariel was still smiling when Monica returned with her coffee and perched on the edge of her desk. "Okay, spill," Monica said without preamble. "Spill what?" Ariel tried to look innocent while closing her phone. "Whatever's got you glowing like you've been lit from the inside. You've been different lately. Happier, more, I don't know, alive? Are you seeing someone?" The question hit too close to home. Ariel felt her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. "I'm just having a good few weeks." "Uh-huh." Monica's dark eyes narrowed with the suspicion of a best friend who knew when she was being lied to. "And this good mood has nothing to do with whoever's been texting you every 5 minutes?" Before Ariel could respond, Sarah, Jeff's executive assistant, appeared at her desk, looking frazzled. "Ariel, thank God you're here. I need you to cover the 2 p.m. investor meeting." My daughter's school just called. Emergency appendectomy. Can you handle the presentation materials and note-taking? Of course, Ariel replied automatically, though her stomach fluttered at the thought of spending 2 hours in a conference room with Jeff while trying to act professionally indifferent. You're a lifesaver. The files are on my desk, and Mr. Perry specifically requested that you handle this personally. After Sarah rushed off, Monica raised an eyebrow. Specifically requested you? That's unusual. He probably just knows I'm familiar with the account, Ariel said, but even she could hear the uncertainty in her voice. The investor meeting proved to be exactly the torture she had anticipated. Jeff sat at the head of the mahogany conference table in his charcoal suit, commanding the room with his usual authority, while 5 investment partners hung on his every word. He discussed quarterly projections and market strategies with the same brilliant confidence that had first caught her attention months ago. But every so often, his eyes would find hers across the room, and for just a moment, the powerful CEO would disappear, replaced by the man who whispered her name against her lips in darkened doorways. Miss Stolt, called Harrison Wells, the lead investor, startling her from her thoughts. Could you pull up the third quarter comparative analysis on the screen? Of course, sir. Ariel moved to the presentation console, acutely aware that Jeff's gaze followed her every movement. As she navigated through the slides, her fingers brushed his briefly when he handed her a marker to highlight key figures. The contact lasted less than a second, but it sent electricity racing up her arm. Excellent work, as always, Jeff said formally, but his voice held a warmth that made her skin tingle. Miss Stolte's organizational skills have been invaluable to this project. The meeting concluded successfully, with the investors expressing enthusiasm about the company's direction. As they filed out, exchanging handshakes and business cards, Jeff lingered near the presentation screen, where Ariel was packing up her materials. Exceptional work today, he said quietly, his back to the departing investors, though I have to admit I found the quarterly projections far less interesting than I usually do. Why's that, Mr. Perry? Ariel asked, playing along with the professional charade while her heart raced. I kept getting distracted by this beautiful woman who was taking notes in the corner, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Very unprofessional of me. Highly inappropriate, Ariel agreed solemnly, though her lips twitched with suppressed laughter. Miss Stolte, Jeff said in his normal business tone as the last investor exited, could you please stay behind to discuss the follow-up materials? Once the door closed, the professional masks dropped instantly. Jeff moved toward her, but Ariel stepped back, glancing nervously at the conference room's glass walls. People can see, she whispered. The blinds are angled. We're invisible from the outside. Jeff reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. I've been thinking about last night all day. So have I, Ariel admitted. But Jeff, this is getting complicated. 3 weeks of secret dinners, hidden text messages, stolen moments. I feel like I'm living in 2 different worlds. Jeff's expression grew serious. Are you having second thoughts? No, she said quickly. That's not... I care about you, more than I thought possible, but I'm scared. Of what? Of everything. Ariel pulled her hand free and moved to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Of what happens when people find out. Of what it means for my career, my reputation. Of whether this is real or just some fantasy that will crash when reality sets in. Jeff joined her at the window, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth but not touching. It's real, Ariel. Whatever this is between us, it's the most real thing I've felt in years. But what happens next? She asked, turning to face him. We can't keep sneaking around forever. Eventually someone will notice. Someone will talk. Would that be so terrible? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was quite ready to address. You don't understand, Ariel said softly. You're Jeff Perry. You're untouchable. If this goes public, you'll be the successful CEO who took a chance on love. I'll be the ambitious assistant who slept her way to the top. Jeff's jaw tightened. Anyone who knows you would never think that. Anyone who knows me doesn't matter. It's the people who don't know me that I'm worried about. Ariel wrapped her arms around herself. The board members, the investors, the business press, they'll reduce everything I've worked for to a gossip headline. So what are you saying? Before Ariel could answer, the conference room door opened and Monica stepped inside, stopping short when she saw them standing close together by the window. Oh, Monica said, her eyes widening as she took in their proximity, the unmistakable tension in the air, the way they had jumped apart when she entered. I was just... Sarah asked me to grab the Henderson files. For a moment, Nobody moved. Monica's gaze shifted between Ariel and Jeff, and Ariel watched her best friend's expression change from confusion to understanding to something approaching shock. "Monica," Ariel started, but her friend held up a hand. "The files are right here," Monica said carefully, grabbing a folder from the table without breaking eye contact with Ariel. "I'll just take these back to Sarah." She backed toward the door, then paused. "Ariel, when you're finished with whatever this meeting is about, could you stop by my desk? I have some questions about the Morrison account." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a thunderclap in the sudden silence. "She knows," Ariel whispered, sinking into a conference chair. "She suspects," Jeff corrected, though his voice was tight with concern. "Same thing." Ariel buried her face in her hands. "Monica is my best friend here, but she's also the biggest gossip on the floor. If she knows, everyone will know by tomorrow." Jeff knelt beside her chair, gently pulling her hands away from her face. "Then maybe it's time to stop hiding. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly." Jeff's voice was steady, determined. "I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to believe that what we have is worth the risk." Ariel looked into his gray eyes and saw sincerity, affection, and something deeper that made her breath catch. But she also saw the gulf between their worlds, his penthouse and her studio apartment, his chauffeur and her subway card, his boardroom and her desk in the corner. "I need time to think," she said finally. Jeff nodded, though disappointment flickered across his features. "Of course, take all the time you need." He stood and straightened his tie, the professional mask sliding back into place. "Miss Stolter, thank you for your assistance with today's presentation. Please have the follow-up reports on my desk by Friday." "Yes, sir," Ariel replied, falling back into her own role with practiced ease. But as she gathered her materials and headed for the door, she could feel Jeff's eyes on her, and she knew that time was running out for their beautiful, impossible secret. Outside the conference room, Monica was waiting by the elevator bank, her expression a mixture of concern and barely contained excitement. "Girl," she said quietly as Ariel approached, "we need to talk." And Ariel knew that the conversation that was about to happen would change everything, whether she was ready or not. The hardest part about falling in love isn't the falling. It's deciding whether you're brave enough to let yourself be caught. The heaviest secrets aren't the ones you carry alone. They're the ones that change the moment someone else knows them. The coffee shop 2 blocks from Crawford and Associates had become their unofficial sanctuary for serious conversations. Monica had insisted they leave the office immediately, claiming she needed caffeine, but really needing neutral ground for whatever was about to unfold. Ariel sat across from her best friend in a corner booth, cradling a latte she had no intention of drinking, while Monica stirred sugar into her cappuccino with unusual intensity. "So," Monica finally said, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since they'd left the building. "Jeff Perry." It wasn't a question, but Ariel felt compelled to answer anyway. "Monica, How long?" Monica interrupted, her voice carefully controlled. 3 weeks, Ariel admitted quietly. 3 weeks. Monica set down her spoon with deliberate precision. 3 weeks of lunch conversations where I've been analyzing every male co-worker on our floor, trying to figure out who's got you glowing like a Christmas tree, and you've been dating our CEO. It's not dating exactly. Ariel, Monica's voice held a warning. I saw the way you two looked at each other in that conference room. I saw the way he said your name, the way you lit up when he spoke to you. That wasn't professional admiration. Ariel closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her secret finally lifting and crushing her simultaneously. It's complicated. I bet it is. Monica leaned back in her chair, studying her friend's face. Start from the beginning, and don't you dare leave anything out. So Ariel told her everything. The lunch conversation that started it all, the meeting in his office, the phone call, Nonna's kitchen, the weeks of stolen moments and secret dinners. She told Monica about the way Jeff made her laugh, the way he listened to her dreams, the way he made her feel seen for the first time in her life. Monica listened without interruption, her expression cycling through surprise, concern, and something that might have been admiration. Damn, Monica said when Ariel finally finished, when you decide to stop being invisible, you really go all out. Are you angry? Ariel asked. Angry? Monica considered the question. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me enough to tell me. I'm worried about what this could mean for your career. I'm terrified that you're going to get your heart broken by a man who lives in a completely different world. She paused. But angry? No. Impressed, maybe. Scared for you, definitely. but not angry. Relief flooded through Ariel. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I didn't know how to explain something I don't fully understand myself. Do you love him? The question hit Ariel like a physical blow. She had been so focused on the impossibility of their situation, the practical complications, that she hadn't allowed herself to name what she felt. I think I might, she whispered. Is that crazy? Honey, falling for your boss is always crazy. Falling for Jeff Perry is next-level insane. Monica reached across the table and squeezed Ariel's hand. But I've watched you for 10 months, and I've never seen you happy like this. Really happy. So either he's incredibly good at manipulation, or this thing between you is real. It feels real, Ariel said. When I'm with him, everything else fades away. He makes me feel like I'm worth paying attention to, worth pursuing, worth everything. And that terrifies you. Completely. Ariel finally took a sip of her latte, buying time to organize her thoughts. Monica, what happens when this gets out? And it will get out. Office romances always do. People will assume I'm sleeping my way to promotions I haven't even asked for. They'll question every project I'm assigned, every meeting I attend. Some people might, Monica agreed. But anyone who knows you, who's worked with you, will know better. Your work speaks for itself, Ariel. You're the most competent person on that floor, and everyone knows it. But what about the people who don't know me? The board members, the clients, the... Stop! Monica's voice was firm. You're borrowing trouble from a future that might not even happen. What if people are happy for you? What if they see what I see? Two people who clearly care about each other trying to navigate a complicated situation. Ariel wanted to believe her friend's optimism, but doubt gnawed at her. It's not that simple. There are company policies, professional ethics, power dynamics, all of which can be managed if you're both committed to handling this right. Monica leaned forward. The real question is, are you willing to give up something that makes you this happy because you're afraid of what other people might think? Before Ariel could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Jeff. Everything okay? You looked upset when you left. Monica noticed her expression soften as she read the message. See? That right there. A man who's paying attention to your emotional state in the middle of a busy workday? That's not nothing, Ariel. What should I do? That's not my decision to make, Monica said gently. But I will say this. I've seen you play it safe your entire career. You take the background roles, you avoid risks, you make yourself small so other people feel comfortable. Maybe it's time to take up some space. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the afternoon crowd rush past the coffee shop windows. Can I ask you something? Ariel said finally. Anything. Are you going to tell anyone? Monica was quiet for a long moment. Do you want me to? I don't know, I'm not ready for the whole office to know, but keeping this secret is exhausting, and I trust you. Then here's what we're going to do, Monica said decisively. I'm going to pretend I never saw anything until you decide what you want to do next. But Ariel, you need to make a decision soon. The longer this goes on in secret, the more complicated it's going to get. I know. And whatever you decide, I've got your back. If you want to explore this thing with Jeff, I'll help you figure out how to do it right. If you decide it's too risky and you want to end it, I'll be here with ice cream and terrible movies. Tears pricked at Ariel's eyes. I don't deserve a friend like you. Yes, you do, Monica said firmly. You deserve everything good that comes your way, including Jeff Perry if that's what you want. They walked back to the office together, and Ariel felt lighter despite the weight of the decision ahead of her. As they entered the building, she caught sight of Jeff waiting for the elevator, his phone pressed to his ear as he handled what sounded like a crisis with their Tokyo office. He looked up as they approached, and for just a moment, his professional mask slipped. Concern flickered in his grey eyes as he took in her face, searching for signs of distress. "Ladies," he said politely as the elevator arrived. "Mr. Perry," Monica replied with equal formality, though Ariel caught the speculative look her friend gave their CEO. The ride to the 15th floor was torture. Jeff stood behind them, close enough that Ariel could smell his cologne, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. She wanted to turn around, to reassure him with a look that everything was okay, but the presence of other employees made that impossible. When the doors opened, Jeff stepped out first, then paused. "Miss Stolter," he said formally, "could you please review the Henderson contracts and have your analysis on my desk by end of day?" "Of course, Mr. Perry," Ariel replied, understanding the subtext. He was creating a legitimate reason for her to come to his office. As they walked to their desks, Monica shook her head in amazement. "Girl," she whispered, That man has it bad for you. What makes you say that? The Henderson contracts were finalized last week. I processed the paperwork myself. Monica grinned. He just wants an excuse to see you before the day's over. For the first time since the conference room incident, Ariel found herself smiling. Maybe Monica was right. Maybe it was time to stop playing it safe. Maybe it was time to see what happened when she chose to be brave instead of invisible. At 5:30, as the office began to empty, Ariel gathered her courage and the Henderson files and made her way to Jeff's office. Whatever happened next, she was done hiding from her own life. She knocked on his door, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Come in." Jeff looked up from his computer as she entered, and the relief on his face was unmistakable. "Close the door," he said softly. This time, Ariel didn't hesitate. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is decide that you're worth the risk someone else is willing to take on you. Some doors close softly, others slam shut, changing the entire architecture of your life with their sound. The late afternoon sun streamed through Jeff's office windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany furniture and expensive art. The building had grown quiet, with most employees heading home to their families, their dinner plans, their normal lives. Ariel stood with her back against the closed door, the Henderson files clutched against her chest like armor. Jeff remained behind his desk, but his usual commanding presence seemed subdued, almost vulnerable. "How much does Monica know?" he asked without preamble. "Everything," Ariel admitted. "She figured it out the moment she saw us together." Jeff ran a hand through his hair, disrupting his usually perfect styling. And she's my friend. She won't say anything unless I ask her to." "That's not what I meant." Jeff stood and moved to the windows, his back to her. "What did she say about us, about this?" Ariel set the files on the chair nearest the door and took a tentative step closer to him. "She asked if I loved you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and electric. Jeff's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. "What did you tell her?" "That I thought I might." Now Jeff did turn, his gray eyes searching her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Might?" Ariel felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling, 10 months of professional distance dissolving in the face of his vulnerable honesty. "I'm scared, Jeff. Not of you, not of what I feel, but of what it means. Tell me what scares you most." She moved closer, drawn by something in his voice. Not the commanding CEO, but the man who had whispered her name against her lips in darkened doorways. "Losing myself," she said softly. "I've spent my whole life building something. My independence, my career, my sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on anyone else. What happens if I give that up for this? What happens if this doesn't work out and I've compromised everything I've worked for?" Jeff crossed the space between them in 3 long strides, stopping just close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not quite touching her. "You think being with me means losing yourself? I think being with you means risking everything I am for something I might become." "And what might you become?" Ariel looked up into his face, seeing past the expensive suit and corner office to the man who had shared his fears over wine and pasta, who had kissed her forehead like she was something precious. "Happy," she whispered. "Really, truly happy. And that terrifies me because I've never been that before." Jeff's expression softened, and he reached up to cup her face gently in his hands. "Ariel, look at me." She met his gaze, seeing her own fears reflected back at her. "I have never asked anyone to risk anything for me," he said quietly. "I've never been worth the risk. But with you, God, with you I want to be. I want to be the man who deserves the chance you're thinking about taking." "You already are," Ariel said, the truth of it surprising them both. "Then what do we do about it?" The question she had been avoiding for 3 weeks hung between them, demanding an answer that would change everything or end it all. "Monica said something today," Ariel said slowly. "She said I've spent my whole career playing it safe, making myself small so other people feel comfortable. She asked if I was willing to give up something that makes me happy because I'm afraid of what other people might think. And I realized I've been asking the wrong question." Ariel stepped closer, close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Instead of asking what I might lose, maybe I should be asking what I might gain." Jeff's thumb traced along her cheekbone, a gesture so tender it made her eyes flutter closed. "What might you gain?" "You," she said simply. "A chance at something real. A reason to stop hiding." She opened her eyes and saw something shift in his expression. "But I need to know that you're in this for the right reasons." "What do you mean? Are you interested in me because I'm different from the women you usually date? Because I'm a challenge? Because I'm—" She struggled for the right words. "Because I'm not what people would expect." Jeff's hands stilled on her face, and for a moment, hurt flickered in his eyes. Is that really what you think? I don't know what to think. 3 weeks ago I was invisible to you. Now you're willing to risk gossip, policy violations, professional complications. That's a big change. Jeff dropped his hands and stepped back, and immediately Ariel regretted the distance. You want to know why I'm willing to risk all of that? His voice was quiet but intense. Because for the first time in 15 years, I wake up thinking about something other than profit margins. Because you make me laugh at things that aren't supposed to be funny. Because when you look at me, you see Jeff, not the CEO or the bank account or the connections I can provide. He moved to his desk and picked up a small framed photo that had appeared there sometime in the last week, a candid shot of the company picnic from last summer. In it, Ariel was helping an elderly janitor carry folding chairs, completely unaware that anyone was watching. I took this photo 10 months ago, Jeff said softly. I told myself it was because you were doing something nice for Harold, setting a good example for company culture. But really, I took it because in that moment, you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Not because of how you looked, but because of who you were when you thought no one was paying attention. Ariel's breath caught. You've had that photo for 10 months? I've been fighting what I felt for you for 10 months, Jeff admitted. Telling myself it was inappropriate, impractical, impossible. And then I heard you say that I would never notice someone like you, and I realized that the only impossible thing was continuing to pretend I hadn't already fallen for you. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying in its implications. Jeff, Ariel whispered, I know it's complicated. I know there will be challenges, conversations we'll have to have, policies we'll need to navigate. But Ariel, I am completely irrevocably in love with you. Not with the idea of you, not with some fantasy version of you, but with exactly who you are right now, in this moment. The words hit her like a physical force, and suddenly all of her careful reasoning, all of her fears and hesitations, seemed insignificant compared to the simple truth of what she felt. I love you too, she said, the words falling from her lips like a prayer. I love your laugh when you forget to be professional. I love the way you remember details about my life that I barely remember telling you. I love that you make me feel brave enough to want things I never thought I deserved. Jeff crossed the space between them again, and this time when he cupped her face in his hands there was no hesitation, no professional distance, no fear of discovery. So what happens now? He asked. Now we figure it out together, Ariel said, standing on her tiptoes to close the distance between them. But first, she kissed him, soft and sure and full of all the words they hadn't said yet. Jeff's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and for the first time in 3 weeks, Ariel felt like she could breathe properly. When they finally broke apart, Jeff rested his forehead against hers. We're really doing this, he said, wonder in his voice. We're really doing this, Ariel confirmed. But Jeff, yes? Tomorrow, I want to tell Monica she can stop pretending she doesn't know anything. And next week, when you take me to dinner, I don't want to choose restaurants based on whether we might run into colleagues. Jeff's smile was brilliant. Is that your way of saying you want to go public? It's my way of saying I'm tired of being invisible, Ariel said, especially to the man I'm in love with. You were never invisible to me, Jeff said softly. I was just too afraid to let myself see you clearly. And now I can't imagine seeing anything else. Outside the office windows, Manhattan sparkled in the gathering dusk. 8 million stories unfolding in the city that never sleeps. But in that corner office, with the door closed and the world held at bay, only one story mattered. The story of 2 people who had found each other across the impossible distance of different worlds and decided that love was worth the risk of everything they thought they knew about themselves. The most dangerous moment in any love story isn't when you fall. It's when you decide to stop trying to catch yourself. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something else is more important than your fear. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of late spring in Manhattan, and Ariel found herself standing outside Crawford & Associates at 8:15 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than usual. She wore a new dress, emerald green with a confident cut that hugged her curves in all the right places, and for the first time in 10 months, she felt like herself walking into that building. The weekend had been a whirlwind of long conversations, shared meals, and careful planning. She and Jeff had talked through every scenario, every potential complication, every policy they needed to address. They had consulted with HR guidelines, discussed timing, and prepared for reactions ranging from supportive to skeptical. But most importantly, they had simply been together. No hiding, No sneaking, no pretending, just Jeff and Ariel, figuring out how to navigate their new reality as a couple. "Girl, you are glowing," Monica said, appearing beside her in the lobby. "And that dress? Gorgeous. Someone's feeling confident this morning." "I have news," Ariel said as they rode the elevator up together. "Good news, or my life is about to get very interesting news?" "Both." Monica raised an eyebrow, but waited until they reached their desks before pressing for details. The morning routine unfolded as usual, coffee brewing, computers starting up, the gentle hum of another workday beginning. But at 9:30 a.m., everything changed. "Attention, everyone," came Jeff's voice from the center of the office floor. Conversations stopped. Keyboards fell silent. Heads turned toward their CEO, who stood near the reception area with an unusual expression on his face. Not quite nervous, but definitely more vulnerable than his usual commanding presence. "I have an announcement to make," Jeff continued, his voice carrying clearly across the space. "It concerns company policy, professional disclosure, and personal transparency." Ariel felt her heart hammering against her ribs. They had planned this moment, rehearsed what he would say, but seeing it unfold in real time made her feel simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. As you all know, Crawford & Associates maintain strict policies regarding workplace relationships, particularly those involving supervisory dynamics. These policies exist to protect all employees and maintain professional integrity. Monica shot Ariel a look that clearly said, "Is this happening right now?" "Effective immediately, I will be formally disclosing a personal relationship with a member of our team. All appropriate HR protocols will be followed, including the implementation of clear professional boundaries and oversight measures to ensure fairness and transparency." The office had gone so quiet that Ariel could hear the air conditioning humming overhead. "The relationship I'm disclosing is with Miss Ariel Stolte." If the office had been quiet before, now it was dead silent. Ariel felt 50 pairs of eyes turned toward her desk, and for a moment the old instinct to make herself invisible kicked in. But then she remembered Jeff's words from Friday night. "You were never invisible to me." She stood up slowly, her chin raised, meeting the curious gazes around her with steady composure. "Miss Stolte and I have been seeing each other personally for several weeks," Jeff continued. "To ensure complete transparency and eliminate any concerns about professional favoritism, Miss Stolte will be transferring to report directly to Sarah Mitchell in our Executive Operations Division, where her skills and experience will be invaluable." Ariel blinked in surprise. This was new information. They had discussed reporting structure changes, but Jeff hadn't mentioned specifics. "This transfer comes with a promotion to Senior Administrative Coordinator and a corresponding salary adjustment," Jeff added, his eyes finding hers across the room. "Miss Stolte's exceptional work speaks for itself, and this advancement reflects her contributions to our company over the past 8 months. Murmurs began to ripple through the office. Surprise, curiosity, a few whispered conversations. But the reactions seemed more intrigued than scandalized. "I understand this news may come as a surprise," Jeff concluded. "I want to assure everyone that our personal relationship will not impact professional decisions, company operations, or workplace dynamics. Miss Stolte and I are committed to maintaining the highest standards of professionalism while also being honest about our personal lives." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Ariel again. "That's all. Thank you for your attention, and please feel free to direct any questions or concerns to HR." As conversations gradually resumed around the office, Ariel remained standing by her desk, processing what had just happened. A promotion, a new department, and the most public declaration of whatever this was. "Holy shit," Monica whispered, appearing at her elbow. "He just promoted you and claimed you in front of the entire company." "Monica! No, seriously." That was the smoothest handling of a workplace romance announcement I've ever seen. He covered every base: transparency, policy compliance, professional advancement based on merit. "Girl, your man knows how to manage a crisis." "I didn't know about the promotion," Ariel admitted, still feeling slightly shell-shocked. "Which makes it even better. He couldn't let anyone think you were getting preferential treatment, so he made sure your advancement was clearly merit-based." Monica grinned. "Smart man." Across the room, Ariel watched Jeff field questions from various employees. Some conversations looked curious, others congratulatory. Tom from the analyst department shook Jeff's hand with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. "Miss Stolte, Ariel turned to find Sarah Mitchell approaching her desk, a warm smile on her face. "Congratulations on your promotion," Sarah said. "I'm looking forward to working with you. Your organizational skills are legendary around here." "Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm honored by the opportunity. Why don't you come by my office around 11? We can discuss your new responsibilities and timeline for transition." As Sarah walked away, Ariel sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by how rapidly her life was changing. "You okay?" Monica asked, perching on the edge of her desk. "I think so. It's just a lot." "The good kind of a lot, or the I want to hide under my desk kind of a lot?" Before Ariel could answer, her computer chimed with a new email from Jeff. Subject: Lunch plans. "Miss Stolte, would you be available for lunch today at 12:30? There's a new bistro near the office that I'd like to try. Nothing secretive or hidden, just two people who care about each other sharing a meal in broad daylight. Also, we should probably discuss your reaction to this morning's announcement. I hope I didn't overstep with the promotion news. Yours, Jeff P.S. You look beautiful in green." Ariel found herself smiling as she typed her response. "Mr. Perry, yes to lunch, yes to broad daylight, and yes, we should talk about the promotion, though I suspect your motives were more strategic than surprising. Thank you for being brave enough to go first." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of congratulations, curious questions, and genuine well wishes from colleagues. Lisa from HR stopped by to discuss policy compliance and seemed genuinely pleased rather than concerned. Even Harrison Wells, the senior partner who usually barely acknowledged administrative staff, paused by her desk to offer congratulations on her promotion. By lunchtime, Ariel realized that her worst fears, whispered gossip, professional jealousy, assumptions about her competence, hadn't materialized. Instead, the predominant reaction seemed to be surprise followed by acceptance, and in many cases happiness for both her and Jeff. At 12:30 she met Jeff in the lobby, and for the first time in weeks, they walked out of the building together, in full view of anyone who cared to look. "So," Jeff said as they strolled toward the bistro, "how are you feeling about this morning?" "Terrified, exhilarated, grateful, and slightly annoyed that you didn't warn me about the promotion announcement," Ariel said honestly. Jeff laughed, the real laugh, not his professional one. "I wanted your reaction to be genuine. If you had known, you might have looked like you expected it, and that would be bad because I needed everyone to see that this promotion was about your abilities, not our relationship. Your surprise was the best proof I could offer that you hadn't asked for special treatment." They paused at a crosswalk, and Jeff caught her hand in his. Another first, this simple gesture of connection in the middle of a Manhattan afternoon. "Are you angry about the strategic maneuvering?" he asked. Ariel considered the question as they crossed the street. "No," she said finally. "I'm impressed and grateful. You protected both of us while advancing my career. That's incredibly thoughtful. I told you I wanted to be worthy of the risk you were taking." The bistro was warm and bustling, filled with the lunch crowd from nearby offices. As they were seated at a table by the window, Ariel noticed several recognizable faces from their building, but no one seemed surprised or scandalized to see them together. "Jeff," she said once they had ordered, "I need to ask you something. Anything. This morning when you made that announcement, was that as scary for you as it was for me?" Jeff was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Yes," he said finally. "I've spent 15 years building a professional reputation based on control and emotional distance. Standing in front of my employees and essentially saying, 'I'm in love and I'm happy about it,' was probably the most vulnerable I've ever been in a professional setting. Any regrets?" Jeff reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Only one." "What's that?" "That it took me 10 months to be brave enough to see what was right in front of me." Ariel turned her palm up to intertwine their fingers, marveling at how natural the gesture felt, how right it was to sit in a sunny restaurant holding hands with the man she loved, while the rest of Manhattan buzzed around them. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we go back to work and tomorrow we do it again. We figure out how to be Jeff and Ariel in professional settings and Jeff and Ariel in personal ones. We navigate the questions and the curiosity and the occasional awkward comment. And tonight," Jeff's smile was soft and full of promise, "tonight I take you to dinner somewhere we've never been before, and we don't worry about who might see us or what they might think." "I'd like that." "Good," Jeff said, lifting her hand to press a gentle kiss to her knuckles, "because I plan to spend a very long time not hiding how I feel about you." As they finished lunch and prepared to return to their new reality, Ariel felt a sense of peace settle over her. The hardest part was over. They had chosen each other, chosen transparency, chosen to build something real together despite the complications. Everything else was just details. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to be ashamed of your happiness. The hardest part of love isn't falling. It's learning to build a life together when the world is watching. 2 months had passed since Jeff's announcement, and Ariel was discovering that being in a public relationship with her former boss was both easier and more complicated than she had imagined. Easier because the secrecy was gone. No more stolen glances across conference rooms, no more careful scheduling of separate lunch breaks, no more pretending that Jeff Perry was just another executive whose coffee preferences she happened to know by heart. More complicated because everything else came with new considerations. On this particular Friday evening, Ariel sat in her newly renovated apartment, a one-bedroom in a better neighborhood that her promotion had made possible, trying to choose between 2 dresses for the Crawford & Associates annual gala. The event was tomorrow night, and it would be the first major company function she and Jeff would attend together as a couple. Her phone rang, interrupting her wardrobe crisis. Still deciding between the navy and the burgundy? Jeff's voice carried the warmth that had become her favorite sound over the past few months. How did you know? Because you've been texting me photos for the past hour, and those are the only 2 dresses you keep coming back to. Ariel laughed, settling back against her pillows. This is important, Jeff. Tomorrow night, I'm not just your girlfriend. I'm your date to the company's biggest social event of the year. There will be board members, major clients, business press. There will also be people who care about us and want to see us happy, Jeff said gently. Monica will be there, Sarah from your new department, Harold from maintenance, who still stops by my office every Tuesday to tell me how lucky I am. Harold talks to you about our relationship? Harold talks to me about everything. Did you know he's been married for 43 years? He has opinions about proper courting behavior. Oh God, Ariel groaned. What kind of opinions? The kind that involve bringing you flowers every Friday and making sure I always walk you to your car. Jeff's voice held laughter. He also suggested I learn to dance properly before tomorrow night. Can you dance? I can handle myself at charity galas and board member weddings, but Harold's definition of properly might be different from mine. Ariel smiled, picturing the elderly janitor giving relationship advice to one of Manhattan's most powerful CEOs. I love that he looks out for us. Everyone looks out for us, Ariel, more than I expected, actually. It was true. The past 2 months had brought a level of support and acceptance that had surprised them both. Monica had appointed herself their unofficial relationship coordinator, offering everything from date suggestions to conflict resolution advice. Sarah Mitchell had become a mentor and advocate, ensuring that Ariel's transition to her new role was smooth and her contributions were recognized. Even some of the senior partners had made efforts to include Ariel in conversations and company events. Speaking of tomorrow night, Jeff continued, I have something to ask you. What's that? My parents will be there. Ariel sat up straighter. In 2 months of dating, Jeff had mentioned his family only in passing, distant figures who lived in Connecticut and called on holidays. The idea of meeting them at a public company event sent anxiety spiraling through her chest. Your parents, at the gala. They attend every year. Major donors, family tradition, social obligation, all the usual reasons. Jeff's voice carried a tension she hadn't heard before. I wanted to give you advance warning. What have you told them about me? The truth, that I'm in a relationship with someone I care about deeply, that she's brilliant, beautiful, and makes me happier than I've been in years. And what did they say? Jeff was quiet for a moment. They said they look forward to meeting the woman who managed to capture their son's attention. There was something in his tone that suggested the conversation hadn't been entirely smooth, but Ariel didn't press. She had learned that Jeff shared his family complications in his own time, in his own way. Navy dress, she said instead. What? I'm wearing the navy dress tomorrow night. It's classic, elegant, appropriate for meeting parents and board members. Ariel, Jeff said softly, you could wear a paper bag and outshine everyone in that room. Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Perry. I certainly hope so, Miss Stolte. Saturday evening arrived with the crisp beauty of late summer in Manhattan. Ariel stood before her bathroom mirror, applying the final touches of makeup with hands that trembled only slightly. The navy dress fit perfectly, hitting just above her knees and highlighting her figure without being inappropriate for a professional event. Her hair was swept into an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings Jeff had given her for her birthday. Not flashy, but beautiful enough to catch the light when she moved. Jeff arrived at 7 sharp, looking devastating in a classic black tuxedo that had definitely been tailored specifically for his tall frame. When she opened the door, his expression went through several stages: appreciation, desire, and something deeper that made her stomach flutter. "You look," he started, then shook his head. "There aren't adequate words." "You clean up pretty well yourself," Ariel replied, straightening his bow tie with an intimacy that still surprised her sometimes. The gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, and arriving with Jeff felt like stepping into a different world. Photographers captured their entrance, not paparazzi, but the society photographers who documented charity events and business galas. Ariel had attended company events before, but always as invisible staff, never as someone worth photographing. "Mr. Perry, Miss Stolte," called a reporter from Manhattan Business Weekly. "Could we get a photo?" Jeff's hand found the small of her back, a gesture that had become natural between them. "Of course." As camera flashes captured their image, Ariel felt a surreal moment of disconnect. 6 months ago, she had been invisible in these same circles. Now she was being photographed on the arm of one of the city's most eligible bachelors, wearing a dress that cost more than her old monthly rent, about to meet his parents at Manhattan's most prestigious hotel. "You okay?" Jeff murmured as they moved into the cocktail reception. "Just adjusting to the alternate reality where I'm newsworthy," Ariel replied. "You've always been newsworthy. The news is just catching up." The ballroom was elegant perfection, crystal chandeliers, white linens, centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's cars. Ariel recognized faces from business magazines and society pages, mingling with Crawford and Associates employees and their spouses. "Ariel!" Monica appeared at her elbow, radiant in emerald green silk. "You look absolutely stunning." "So do you. Is that a new dress?" "New dress, new hair, new attitude. I figured if my best friend can reinvent her entire life, I can at least upgrade my wardrobe." Monica grinned. "Plus, Tom from Analytics finally asked me out. Apparently, watching you and Jeff fall in love gave him courage." "Tom? Really? Really? Turns out half the office has been waiting for someone to make the first move on workplace romance. You two opened the floodgates." Jeff returned from the bar with champagne, and the three of them fell into easy conversation about the evening, the decorations, and Monica's upcoming date with Tom. It felt normal, natural, like any other social gathering with friends, until a voice behind them said, "Jefferson." Jeff's posture changed immediately, not quite tense, but more formal, more guarded. He turned, and Ariel found herself face to face with 2 people who were clearly his parents. Jefferson Perry Sr. was a distinguished man in his early 70s, with silver hair and the kind of bearing that spoke of old money and older traditions. His wife, Catherine, was elegant in the way that only comes from a lifetime of attending events exactly like this one. Both were studying Ariel with the kind of polite intensity that wealthy families had perfected over generations. "Mother, father," Jeff said formally, "I'd like you to meet Ariel Stolte." "Ariel, these are my parents, Jefferson and Catherine Perry." "Mr. and Mrs. Perry," Ariel said, extending her hand with more confidence than she felt. "It's lovely to meet you." "Miss Stolte," Catherine replied, her handshake firm and her smile perfectly calibrated. "We've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope." "Jefferson speaks of you very highly," his father said, though something in his tone suggested that high regard from his son wasn't necessarily the same as approval from the family. The conversation that followed was polite, careful, full of the subtle navigation that came with meeting people who were important to someone you cared about. Catherine asked about Ariel's work, her background, her family. Jefferson Sr. inquired about her education and her thoughts on the company's recent expansion. Throughout it all, Jeff stood beside her like a protective shield, his hand occasionally finding hers, his presence a steady anchor in what could have been choppy social waters. "Excuse me," a waiter approached with a discreet message for Jeff. "Mr. Perry, you're needed for the donor recognition ceremony." "Of course." Jeff turned to Ariel. "Will you be all right for a few minutes?" "I'll keep her company," Monica said quickly, appearing with perfect timing. As Jeff departed with his parents to fulfill social obligations, Monica linked arms with Ariel. "How did that go?" she asked. "Hard to tell. They were perfectly polite, but I felt like I was being evaluated for a position I didn't know I was applying for." "Welcome to dating someone from old money," Monica said pragmatically. "The good news is that Jeff clearly doesn't care what they think. Did you see how he looked at you when his mother was asking about your family? Like he was ready to defend you against an army. I noticed. That's love, girl. The real kind. The kind that chooses you over everything else. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, with Jeff delivering a speech about community investment and corporate responsibility that reminded Ariel why she had fallen for his mind, as much as his heart. When he returned to her side, some of the tension she had been carrying finally relaxed. "Dance with me?" he asked as the orchestra began playing. "I thought you'd never ask." On the dance floor, surrounded by other couples and the soft glow of chandeliers, they found their rhythm easily. Jeff was an excellent dancer, confident, graceful, completely focused on her. "Your parents seem nice," Ariel said diplomatically. "They're complicated," Jeff replied. "But they'll come around. They have to. I'm not giving you up for anyone's approval. What if they never approve?" Jeff spun her gently, then pulled her back into his arms. "Then they'll miss out on knowing the woman I love. Their loss." The simple certainty in his voice made Ariel's heart swell. As they swayed together, she caught sight of their reflection in the ballroom's mirrored walls, a striking couple, elegant and happy, completely absorbed in each other. "Jeff? I love you. All of this. The gala, your parents, the photographers, the complications. I love all of it because it's part of loving you." Jeff's smile was radiant. "Even when my mother spends 20 minutes asking about your family tree. Even then. Though I reserve the right to complain about it later." Duly noted. As the evening wound down and they made their rounds saying goodbyes, Ariel reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been invisible at company events. Tonight, she had been photographed, interviewed, and introduced to Manhattan society as Jeff Perry's girlfriend. But more than that, she had been happy, genuinely, completely happy, in a way that had nothing to do with external validation and everything to do with the man whose hand she held as they walked into the December night. "What are you thinking about?" Jeff asked as they waited for their car. "How surreal this all is. How different everything feels. Good different or overwhelming different?" "Perfect different," Ariel said, leaning into his warmth as the warm evening breeze surrounded them. "Like I'm finally living the life I was meant to have." Jeff kissed the top of her head, and Ariel knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, disapproving parents, society expectations, the constant navigation of their public relationship, they would face them together, and that made all the difference. The most beautiful love stories aren't the ones without complications. They're the ones where love grows stronger than the complications it faces. The strongest relationships aren't built in moments of peace. They're forged in the fire of challenges that demand you choose each other over everything else. Autumn had arrived in Manhattan with all the promise and uncertainty that new seasons bring. Ariel stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jeff's penthouse apartment, watching the sun set over Central Park, while he finished what had become the most important conference call of his career. 6 months of living between 2 apartments had led to this. She had officially moved in 3 weeks ago, though their lives had been intertwining naturally for months. Tonight, however, everything they had built together was about to be tested in ways neither had anticipated. "Thank you for your time," Jeff said into his headset, his voice maintaining professional calm despite the tension radiating from his shoulders. "I'll have an answer for you by tomorrow morning." He ended the call and stood motionless for a moment, staring at his phone as if it might provide solutions to the impossible situation they now faced. "How bad is it?" Ariel asked, moving away from the windows to stand beside him. Jeff ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she had learned meant he was processing information he didn't want to accept. Titan Capital made their final offer. They want to acquire Crawford & Associates, and they're threatening a hostile takeover if I don't agree to negotiations. Ariel felt her stomach drop. Titan Capital was everything Crawford & Associates wasn't. Corporate, impersonal, known for gutting companies and restructuring them into profitability at the cost of employee loyalty and company culture. Can they do that? They own 15% of our stock already. If they can convince our other major shareholders... Jeff shook his head. "Yes, they can do that. What does that mean for the company, for our employees?" Jeff's expression darkened. "Mass layoffs, office relocations, everything we've built, everything my father left me, transformed into just another asset in their portfolio." Ariel had never seen him look so defeated, and it broke her heart. Crawford & Associates wasn't just Jeff's business. It was his legacy, his life's work, the place where they had found each other. "There has to be another option." "There is," Jeff said quietly. Richard Whitmore made that very clear. Something in his tone made Ariel's blood run cold. "What kind of option?" Jeff moved to the bar cart, but instead of pouring his usual scotch, he just stood there, his back to her. Whitmore has a daughter, Vivian, 28, Stanford MBA. Everything the business world considers an appropriate match for someone in my position. Jeff, what are you saying? I'm saying that Richard Whitmore believes in old-fashioned business arrangements, strategic marriages that benefit both families. Jeff's voice was carefully controlled, but Ariel could hear the anger beneath it. He made it very clear that a personal alliance between our families would make the acquisition unnecessary. The words hit Ariel like a physical blow. He wants you to marry his daughter. He wants me to consider the benefits of combining our companies through marriage, rather than acquisition. Two heirs, both trained in business, both invested in success. Jeff finally turned around, and the pain in his eyes made her breath catch. It would save every job at Crawford & Associates, protect the company culture, honor my father's legacy, and destroy us. And destroy us, Jeff confirmed. Ariel sank onto the couch, her mind racing through the implications. How long do you have to decide? 24 hours. Whitmore wants an answer by tomorrow evening, or they proceed with the hostile takeover. Have you met her? Vivian? Twice. Business functions, charity events. She's intelligent, accomplished, everything my parents would approve of. Jeff moved to sit across from her, his elbows on his knees. She's also completely wrong for me, in every way that matters. Because you love me. Because I love you, Jeff said simply. But Ariel, this isn't just about us anymore. 300 people work for Crawford & Associates. Sarah, Monica, Harold, Tom, everyone who supported us, who celebrated our relationship. If I refuse Whitmore's offer, half of them will lose their jobs. Ariel felt the weight of impossible choices settling over them like a suffocating blanket. What do you want to do? I want to tell Richard Whitmore exactly where he can put his offer. I want to fight the takeover, even if it means losing everything. I want to choose love over legacy and trust that somehow we'll figure out the rest. But I keep thinking about Harold, who's 3 years from retirement, about Monica, who just bought her first apartment, about all the people who depend on this company for their livelihoods. Ariel stood and moved to the window, looking out at the city lights that sparkled like stars. Somewhere out there, hundreds of families were living their lives, unaware that their futures hung in the balance of a decision that should have been purely personal. What if we find another way? She said suddenly. What do you mean? Ariel turned back to him, her mind working through possibilities. Whitmore wants to acquire Crawford & Associates because it's profitable and well-positioned. But what if we made it less attractive as a target? I'm not following. You said they want to gut the company culture, restructure everything for maximum profit. What if we restructured first, but in a way that protected employees instead of eliminating them? Jeff's expression grew thoughtful. Go on. Employee ownership, profit sharing. Make Crawford & Associates partially employee-owned so that any hostile takeover would face massive internal resistance. Ariel moved to his computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she pulled up corporate law websites. If the employees have a stake in the company, they become shareholders with voting rights. That's actually brilliant, Jeff said, moving to look over her shoulder. But the logistics alone would take months to implement, not if we had help. Ariel picked up her phone, scrolling through contacts. Remember David Chen from the holiday party? The employment lawyer who works with union negotiations? You want to call him now? It's almost 10 p.m. I want to save the company we both love and the people who have become our family. Ariel's fingers hovered over the phone. Unless you'd rather marry Vivian Whitmore. Jeff's answer came in the form of a kiss, desperate, grateful, full of love and admiration. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. How did I get so lucky to fall in love with someone this smart? You listened when a woman made a joke about being invisible, Ariel said with a smile. Now help me figure out how to make Titan Capital invisible instead. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of phone calls, legal consultations and frantic preparation. David Chen had been intrigued enough by their proposal to cancel his morning meetings and dive into the research. By noon, they had a preliminary framework for employee ownership that would make Crawford & Associates significantly less attractive as a takeover target. But more importantly, they had something else, a united front. Ariel watched Jeff present their alternative proposal to the Crawford & Associates board, his voice strong and confident as he explained how employee ownership would benefit everyone involved. She saw the man she had fallen in love with, brilliant, ethical, willing to fight for what mattered. When Titan Capital called that evening, Jeff's answer was clear and decisive. Crawford and Associates is not for sale, Mr. Whitmore. Not to you, not to anyone. We're implementing employee ownership structures that will make any hostile takeover prohibitively expensive and operationally impossible. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. You're making a mistake, Perry. This offer won't come again. You're right, Jeff said, his eyes finding Ariel's across the room. It won't, because we're building something better than what you could ever offer. As Jeff ended the call, Ariel felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with romantic love and everything to do with partnership. They had faced their first real crisis as a couple, and instead of letting it divide them, they had found a way to fight together. Think it will work? Jeff asked, pulling her into his arms. I think we just proved that we're stronger together than either of us could be alone, Ariel replied. Titan Capital has no idea what they're up against. And what's that? Two people who know that the best partnerships aren't about one person saving the other. They're about both people choosing to save what matters most. Jeff's smile was radiant. I love you, Ariel Stolter. I love you too, Jeff Perry. Now and when things get complicated, especially when things get complicated. As they stood in their living room, truly their living room now, surrounded by legal documents and coffee cups and the evidence of a battle fought and won together, Ariel knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as partners, equal, fierce, and unbreakable. The most powerful love stories aren't about two people who never face problems. They're about two people who discover that together they can solve anything. The best love stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with ready for whatever comes next. 2 years later, the autumn sun streamed through the windows of Crawford and Associates' newly renovated conference room, where the quarterly employee-owner meeting was just concluding. Ariel stood at the presentation screen, pointing to graphs that showed record profits and employee satisfaction scores that had doubled since implementing their ownership program. Questions? She asked the room full of faces, colleagues who had become shareholders, friends who had become family. Monica raised her hand from the front row, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I have a question about long-term projections. Go ahead, Ariel replied, though something in her best friend's tone made her suspicious. What are the projections for the company when our senior vice president of operations decides to take maternity leave? The room fell silent. Ariel felt her cheeks warm as 50 pairs of eyes focused on her with varying degrees of surprise, excitement, and knowing smiles. Monica? Ariel said carefully, what makes you think, girl, you've been glowing for weeks, you turned green at the mention of coffee yesterday, and you keep touching your stomach when you think no one's looking? Monica grinned. Plus, Jeff's been walking around like he's got the biggest secret in the world. A chorus of gasps and excited murmurs filled the room. Harold, now officially the company's head of facilities, and still offering relationship advice to anyone who would listen, started clapping slowly. Well? Sarah Mitchell called out from her seat. Is Monica right? Ariel looked around the room at all the faces, people who had supported her and Jeff through everything, who had celebrated their love, who had become their chosen family. Her hand unconsciously moved to her still flat stomach, and she felt a smile bloom across her face. We're pregnant, she said softly. The room erupted. Cheers, applause, congratulations shouted from every corner. Tom jumped up to high-five Monica, who was already out of her seat and heading toward Ariel for a hug. How far along? Sarah asked once the initial excitement died down. 10 weeks. We just had our first appointment yesterday. Ariel's smile was radiant. Everything looks perfect. Where's Jeff? Harold demanded. That boy should be here for this. He's in the Tokyo office this week, but he'll be back tomorrow, Ariel replied. And yes, Harold, he's over the moon. Of course he is, Monica said, squeezing Ariel's hand. This man bought a ring 3 months after your first date. He's been ready for forever since day one. The mention of the ring made Ariel's left hand unconsciously move to touch the elegant solitaire that had appeared on her finger 8 months ago during a quiet dinner at Nonna's kitchen, the same restaurant where everything had begun. As the meeting officially ended and people began to filter out, offering congratulations and excited chatter about baby showers and office pools for due dates, Ariel felt a familiar sense of amazement at how much her life had changed. Crawford and Associates had not only survived the Titan Capital threat, but had thrived beyond anyone's expectations. Employee ownership had created a culture of investment and innovation that attracted clients and top talent from around the world. The company had expanded to 3 cities, and Ariel's role had evolved from senior administrative coordinator to Senior Vice President of Operations, a position she had earned through strategy, hard work, and the kind of brilliant problem-solving that had saved the company. But more than professional success, she had found something she had never dared to dream of, a love that grew stronger with every challenge, a partnership that made both people better, and now the promise of a family built on the foundation of everything they had learned together. "Ariel," Monica lingered as the room emptied. "Can I ask you something?" "Always. Are you happy? Really, truly happy?" Ariel considered the question, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. 2 years ago, she had been invisible, safe in her small world of careful boundaries and quiet dreams. Now she was pregnant with the child of the man she loved, standing in a conference room where she was respected and valued, surrounded by people who had become her family. "I'm more than happy," she said finally. "I'm alive in a way I never knew was possible." "Good," Monica said, tears gathering in her eyes, "because watching you and Jeff fall in love changed something in all of us. You proved that taking risks on love isn't just brave, it's necessary." That evening, Ariel sat in the penthouse she now truly shared with Jeff, her laptop open to a video call with Tokyo, where her husband, still a word that made her smile, was finishing his meetings for the day. "How did the employee meeting go?" Jeff asked, his tired face lighting up when he saw her. "Interesting," Ariel said with a smile. "Monica outed us." Jeff's expression shifted to concern and then understanding. "The pregnancy?" "The pregnancy. Apparently, I'm not as subtle as I thought." Jeff laughed, the sound carrying across the ocean between them. "How did everyone react?" "Like we just announced Christmas was coming early. Harold wants to know if you need advice on how to baby-proof the office." "Of course he does." Jeff's expression grew soft. "I hate that I wasn't there. You'll be here tomorrow, and Jeff." "Yes?" "Everyone's excited. Not just happy for us, but genuinely excited about our baby being part of the Crawford and Associates family." Jeff's eyes filled with emotion. "Our baby is going to grow up knowing they're surrounded by people who choose to love and support each other, just like their parents did." "Just like their parents did," Jeff agreed. Later that night, as Ariel prepared for bed in the master bedroom that had become truly theirs, filled with photos of their travels, books they had read together, and small mementos from 2 years of building a life side by side, she caught sight of herself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at her was confident, glowing, completely comfortable in her own skin. She was no longer the invisible assistant who believed she wasn't worth noticing. She was Ariel Perry. Yes, she had taken his name, and it had felt like claiming her place in the world rather than losing herself. Mother-to-be, business executive, partner in every sense of the word. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jeff. "I love you, both of you. See you tomorrow." She typed back, "We love you too. Come home safe." As she settled into bed, Ariel thought about the joke that had started everything, her throwaway comment about being invisible, spoken without knowing that the most important person in her life was listening. Now, 2 years later, she understood that she had never been invisible at all. She had just been waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right courage to let herself be seen. And when that moment came, it hadn't just changed her life. It had given her everything she never knew she wanted. The next morning, Jeff's flight landed at JFK at 6:30 a.m. By 7:15, he was walking through the front door of their home, dropping his briefcase to sweep Ariel into his arms and spin her around their living room. "Careful," she laughed. "You might make your baby dizzy." "Our baby," Jeff corrected, setting her down gently and placing both hands on her stomach. "Our perfect, beautiful, miraculous baby." As they stood together in the morning light, surrounded by the life they had built and the love they had chosen to fight for, Ariel knew that this was just the beginning. The invisible girl and the powerful CEO had become something greater than either could have been alone. Partners, parents-to-be, and proof that the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest acts of courage, the courage to be seen, the courage to see clearly, and the courage to choose love, again and again, no matter what challenges arise. 6 months later, the Crawford and Associates newsletter featured a birth announcement. "We are thrilled to welcome Emma Grace Perry, born to Jeff and Ariel Perry on a beautiful spring morning. Emma is already showing signs of her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. The entire Crawford and Associates family is excited to watch her grow." And in the margin of that newsletter, someone had written in pencil, "Some love stories change everything. This one changed us all." Looking back on Ariel and Jeff's journey, from a chance overheard comment to building a family and a business together, what moment do you think was the real turning point in their love story? Was it when she made the joke about being invisible? When he asked her to dinner? When they chose to fight Titan Capital together? Or somewhere else entirely? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.